I'm Donna Lampkin-Stevens, and we're back on Spotlight, where we feature the University of Central Arkansas's College of Fine Arts and Communication. Today we're going to talk to a new faculty member, Dr. Riva Brown, Assistant Professor of Public Relations, and I'm looking forward to visiting with her about her first semester at UCA and maybe what her plans are for the future. So we'll be back in a moment.
The University of Central Arkansas may be close to home, but it's taken me far. Through study abroad programs and teaching science to children in Rwanda. I've also had the opportunity to do cancer research as an undergrad. And I've discovered Greek life that's about giving back and having fun. UCA put me and my education front and center. Learn how at uca.edu.
I'm back now with my friend Dr. Riva Brown, who's a brand new Assistant Professor of Public Relations to UCA. So Riva, welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you, Donna.
Now tell us a little bit about your background. I understand you're a South Mississippi girl and you have done quite a bit in your professional life, but let's go back to your early days. I understand that your claim to fame is you were a classmate of Brett Favre's.
Yes, I was. That is my claim to fame. Hancock North Central Elementary School, junior high school, and high school, and the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg.
Now Hancock County is on the coast.
On the Mississippi Gulf Coast, right. Hancock County is between Picayune, Mississippi, and Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, which is in Hancock County.
And so, growing up, did you want to you've done more than just public relations. You have a journalism background as well.
Yes,
so tell me about growing up, what did you want to do?
When I was growing up, let me tell you, Donna, my father drove the school bus, the late Reverend David Brown. And I would bring the Picayune item on the school bus all the time.
As a little girl?
As a little girl, and read the newspaper on the school bus.
A girl after my own heart.
And you know the kids, they tease me mercifully. Yes, it was awful. They teased me. You such a nerd. Who reads the newspaper? You're in elementary school. What are you doing reading the newspaper? But I really loved it, and I knew at a young age that I wanted to be a journalist. I just didn't know what type of journalist, whether it was newspaper or even television.
So why did you love the newspaper as an 8-year-old?
I was nosy, Donna. I was nosy. I wanted to be in people's business. I wanted to get the scoop.
It's a great profession for that.
Right. I wanted to be the first person to know what was going on before anyone else and bring that news to them in my own way.
Well, I think that's a great way to grow up.
Yes.
So did you have a high school paper? Did you work on the yearbook? What did you?
We didn't have a high school newspaper. I always wanted to start my own newspaper when I was growing up in Catahoula, Mississippi. That's the community that I'm from, and I had the name of it already.
What was it?
It was going to be the Houlaville Happenings.
I love it, Riva.
Houlaville Happenings, short for Houlaville,
Yeah, sure.
my nickname for Catahoula. I didn't get it off the ground. Unfortunately, wasn't a lot of news in the little small community. We started out with dirt roads, and I guess we could have chronicled that, going from dirt roads to the paved roads and everything. But I did start a publication when I was in college, though.
Okay.
Yes.
So you finished high school, and
I
you know you
did.
want to study journalism.
Yes, yes.
And so where did you consider going, and you wound up at Southern Miss?
Right. Well, I wanted to get far away from Catahoula, Mississippi as I could. I really wanted to just travel and go somewhere.
Sure.
And my high school was predominantly white. I was one of 8 African Americans in my senior class, and I wanted to get that HBCU experience. My thoughts were to attend Jackson State University, where I ended up working later. But my mother thought it was too far away from home.
How far was that?
3 hours. That is not far at all. My mother thought that was too far.
The end of the earth.
I know, 3 hours away. So at the last minute, I applied to the University of Southern Mississippi, probably a month or less before school started, and ended up at the University of Southern Mississippi, which was only an hour away. My mother felt a lot more comfortable with that.
So what did you find at Southern Miss? I mean, you and I share an alma mater.
Yes.
I wound up doing my PhD down there and loved it, loved the school, loved the department,
Yes.
loved the area. What did you find? And this was before I was down there. When were you as an undergraduate there?
Yes, I started there in the fall of 1989. and I graduated with my undergraduate in journalism, news editorial in '93. And I immediately jumped on the Student Prints. I had
the student newspaper.
The student newspaper, the Student Prints, and I wrote under a moniker. I didn't write under Riva Brown at the time. They let me write under Renee Braun.
Oh, now why was this?
I don't know.
You were just,
I don't know. I was shy. I was shy.
So nobody knew who you were?
They didn't know who I was. They knew who Renee Braun was at first. I only wrote a few articles early on. My middle name is Renee, so it worked out. Braun, Brown, it worked out well.
Did you, do you remember big stories that you were involved in covering?
Well, my senior year, I was the first African-American executive editor of the Student Prints, and there were a lot of things that were going on campus at the time. We really brought attention to the story of Clyde Kennard, and he was the first African-American student to attempt to enroll at Southern Miss.
And Kennard Hall is now named
Kennard
for him.
Hall, right. Kennard Washington Hall is named after him. So during my senior year of college, I was able to write all about that, and being a part of that was very instrumental in my journalism career. Now before then, I mentioned that I had my own independent publication that I started the fall of my sophomore year, and we wrote a lot about the Clyde Kennard story in that publication. And becoming executive editor of the school newspaper, we were able to take that story to a larger scale, and it got the university's attention, and it kind of helped lead to everything with naming the building.
Oh, that was a direct result.
I won't say it was a direct result.
But still, you shined the light on it.
Yes, I would like to think that the publication helped bring awareness about the Clyde Kennard story. So some of the organizations on campus, the student organizations such as the Afro-American Student Organization, they could take it to a new level with trying to get some recognition for Kennard.
So what was his era? When was he there?
This
or
was
tried to, and tell me his story.
If I recall, it was in 1950s, maybe late 1950s. And with the Kennard story, as I recall, the facts are a little shady right now. He was former military, and he wanted to enroll, but of course, African Americans weren't allowed to enroll at the time. And he ended up being arrested for stealing chicken feed, as I recall, and ended up in prison, got sick and died, never got a chance to even enroll at the university. And it was an unfortunate story, what happened to him. And Dr. Lucas, Aubrey Lucas, who was the president, who became president later, he was one of the people involved in that, not so much directly, but when the university honored Kennard and named the hall after him, Dr. Lucas was the person who kind of pushed that forward, remembering his time at the university when Kennard tried to enroll.
And when Dr. Lucas was a faculty member there.
Right. I think he worked in student services, maybe the registrar's office at the time.
So Clyde Kennard is sort of the James Meredith of Southern Miss, could you say?
Yes, yes, definitely.
So you graduate with your degree in journalism, and what did you do?
I went to work at the Sun Herald in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Okay. Back to the coast.
Right, back to the coast. I had interned there for 3 summers, and it was an interesting
Doing
time.
what?
I covered everything.
News.
You know, news, definitely news. Everything. I hung out at the city council meetings, at murder trials, you name it, I did it. Of course, the weather stories, the crime stories.
Any hurricanes during your time there?
No hurricanes during my time, thank goodness. No hurricanes during my time. But when I graduated, I started off as a general assignment reporter, but then I ended up covering Biloxi City Council. And it was an interesting time because there was maybe 1 casino in Biloxi, 1 or 2 casinos at the time. So everything that came before the city council seemed to be directly or indirectly related to a casino coming aboard, whether it was ethics violations with the council members who owned their own businesses, yet had to vote on issues involving the casino, various things like that. And it was a great time. It was a fun time.
I bet. So you had a few years at the Sun Herald, and then at some point you decided to go back to graduate school. What went into your decision there, and what did you study?
Well, I went to graduate school and I earned a master's in public relations.
From Southern Miss?
From Southern Miss as well. And it was just a matter of doing something a little different, but still related to.
Now, had you taken PR classes in your undergraduate?
I did not take PR
you had
classes.
No experience really whatsoever?
None really.
Okay.
None really at the time.
But good writer, being a good writer and understanding the media, I would think would be very helpful.
Right, and having the knowledge that at some point many journalists I knew transitioned into public relations, and it seemed to be a natural fit that would capitalize on my journalism background.
So at that point, what year are we talking about there?
This was in the maybe mid to late 90s.
Okay, and so you finished your undergraduate, your master's degree in public relations.
Right,
and then went straight to Jackson State, or what?
Well, from there, I was weighing a job in PR or going back into journalism. What do? I have a master's in public relations. Do I pursue this? And that love for journalism was still there. I still had some things I felt I needed to prove in journalism. So I ended up going to work at the Clarion Ledger.
A Gannett newspaper.
Right, a Gannett newspaper. We know all about Gannett newspapers. So I went to work for the Clarion Ledger.
Finally made it to Jackson.
Finally made it to Jackson. Right, yes.
And so what did you do at the Clarion Ledger?
Well, I had various stints at the Clarion Ledger. I covered Jackson City Council. I covered federal courts. I was a general assignment reporter for a while. I covered higher education, and that was my favorite beat. I loved covering higher education.
Why?
Well, look at me now.
Well, I know, but at that point you didn't have any inkling probably that you'd be sitting here today.
Right. Well, in the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to teach a college class as an adjunct. That was kind of a goal in the back of my mind. And maybe that's why I loved covering higher education so much, because when I was in graduate school working on my master's degree in public relations, I was able to work as a graduate assistant, teaching that basic news writing class. And I really loved teaching. I really loved working with the students to help them hone their basic writing skills. So I knew that that was something I wanted to do. At the time, I did not envision doing it full time, but there were other plans in the works for me.
So in Jackson, what higher ed institutions did you cover?
Well, because the Clarion Ledger is a statewide newspaper, I had to cover all of the state universities, 8 state universities, and 15 community colleges throughout the state of Mississippi. And because we have so many private colleges in Jackson, in the state capital, I also had to cover them. So I was quite busy.
Yes,
I had to make contacts at all of those schools. Of course, I focused on the 8 state universities and the colleges within Jackson and the community colleges in the vicinity. But I had contacts at all of those schools. I was always on the road, always putting a lot of miles on my car, going to visit those institutions.
And covering Board of Trustees meetings?
Board of Trustees, of course, with IHL, the Institutions of Higher Learning, which was the board that oversaw all of the 8 state universities. The community colleges, they had a separate board, and of course I had to go attend those board meetings as well.
So at what point did you attain your dream of becoming an adjunct instructor?
Well, when I transitioned to Jackson State, later on I worked at Jackson State. I also worked as a copy editor
at the
Clarion Ledger, and that allowed me to do some things in the daytime because I worked at night. And then working in the public relations office at Jackson State, I moonlighted on my lunch break. And taught a news reporting class, introduction to news reporting class on my lunch break while I was working in PR at Jackson State.
And then at what point did you fully leave journalism?
When I fully left journalism, that was when I was working for Jackson State in the public relations office.
You just sort of made the transition
yeah, I just
slowly.
It was a slow transition, yes. I did that. And how I ended up full-time, there was, unfortunately, a professor had passed away in the middle of the fall semester.
In the journalism department?
In public relations.
Okay.
He was a public relations professor. At the time, I was an adjunct teaching the basic news reporting class. And they needed someone to fill in and there were no other faculty members who taught public relations. They were all mostly television or radio or print news or the gen ed type of classes. And they knew that I had a master's degree in public relations. It worked out. I was the senior editor writer in the public relations office, and it made sense for me to come in and take over the PR writing class that this faculty member taught.
And when was that?
That was, gosh, it was a fall semester. I want to say maybe the mid-2000s, something
not too
like
long
that.
ago.
Right.
And then at what point did you decide, I'm going to go do my PhD? Because, I mean, I'm here to tell you, it's hard to do it after you've been out for a while.
It was very difficult. It was a very difficult time. Well, what happened after I took over that class that spring semester, I ended up, that's when I was back as a copy editor at the Clarion Ledger, and I worked as a visiting instructor during the daytime because someone needed to fill in for this professor. They couldn't launch a search in the middle of the academic year. And during that time, they did launch a search, and I wasn't going to apply for it because I didn't have a doctorate. And I was coerced to apply for the job. The last day, I turned in my application materials for the public relations job there at Jackson State. And I got the job. I got the job without a doctorate. But the stipulation was that I had to go to school and earn a doctorate. And that was how I ended up. They twisted my arm. I didn't want to do it at first. I thought, how am I going to juggle working full-time and traveling 1.5 to 2 hours
because you
to
went
take
back
classes?
to Southern Miss.
I did. Because that was the only school that I could attend to earn my doctorate in the vicinity, without going to class online, which I didn't want to do at the time.
So how long did it take you?
Well, I had a rough start my first year and decided I needed to wait a minute and go back. So yes, I'm a PhD school dropout, Donna. Yes.
But now we can talk about it because you're
because of Dr. Brown now. But yes, I say that, my first semester, fall of 2009, that's when I started the PhD program, but that was the same semester that I became a full-time professor at Jackson State, and I just did not know how to juggle everything because, as you know, when you become a full-time professor, there are other demands other than teaching class. You have to serve on committees. There are other things that you have to do, and it was a bit much for me to do two new things at the same time, right? So I took a hiatus.
For how long?
Just till fall of 2010. So I returned, and I was full-time at Southern Miss while working as a teaching assistant there, and full-time at Jackson State.
Wow, I don't know how you did it.
Right, and then I didn't sleep much. I slept on the side of the Highway 49 many nights. Yes. I became great.
Looking back, you think, how did I do
that?
this?
Right.
You couldn't do it today.
Right. I thank Red Bull and 5 Hour Energy. Yes, plug for them helping me through. Right.
And you finished, I think you defended your dissertation, what, in the spring?
The summer.
The summer,
right.
So you were going to go through graduation in December 2013.
Right. I earned my degree in August, and I have it in a nice Southern Miss frame. But there was no summer graduation to March. So I will be returning to Southern Miss December 13th to March and be hooded.
Good for you.
Yes.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So how did you wind up here, and why did you want to make the move out of Mississippi for the first time in your life?
Well, new administration comes in and things change. As I mentioned before, I was told to go, I had to go and earn a PhD. But when new administration came in, things changed a bit, and that caused me to have to get on the job market. And I wanted to stay as close to home as possible. I'm a Southern girl. I grew up in rural backwoods Mississippi, even though I'm originally from New Orleans, so I consider those rural roots as my home. And I wanted to be in an area like that, to start off as Dr. Brown. Yes. And I just applied to schools in the South. And when I visited here in Conway, I thought, wow, the campus is so beautiful. It's a nice rural area. I love the nature of Arkansas, and it seemed to be a great fit, meeting the faculty members and just being on campus and in the community.
Well, I know that your first semester is very difficult.
Yes, yes.
Particularly with the transition,
Yes.
a move and everything. But how have you found it? I mean, what have you, I know you've brought a lot of energy to the department. You've brought new ideas and fresh. You're much into digital media, digital PR, which we all are transitioning toward. How have you found it?
Well, I found it challenging and refreshing, and I think
That's good.
as you know, new things, so it's a bit rocky at first, and I always tell myself, oh, 2014 is going to be great. I have this out of the way. I can
That's true.
regroup and reassess.
You've had quite a year in 2013.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
finishing up and then a move and then this. So,
Right.
so what ideas do you have for the future?
Well, some of the things that the students and I are currently working on in the department, we're the Department of Communication. We want to communicate all the great things that we're doing. So the students and I are working on elevating our social media profile in terms of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, just raising our profile not only online but on campus and in the community as well. And the students have really taken on different projects in the department. The PR writing students, for example, they're redoing the brochure for the department. They're writing content that will be available on our website.
Actual good, real world experience.
Right, they're doing newsletter articles for the department. So it's great to have them vested in elevating the profile of their own department because they know what students want. They know what students want to see, and they would know what would attract a potential student to the Department of Communication to major in communication or public relations.
Sure. Now tell me, I love the fact, I mean, you know, I'm a trained journalist, but I dabble in some PR with the college, with this show and with some other things that I do, but I think it's so important to have the journalists know PR and vice versa. What would you say to that? I mean, how important has your journalism training and education been to what you're doing now?
Oh, Donna, it's been so valuable because as a public relations person, you have to pitch stories and get the journalists interested in covering your event or your campaign or whatever. And knowing how to speak their language as a public relations person, knowing how to speak that journalism language is very key.
And I think you're more respected by a journalist because I think journalism people sometimes think, oh, they're PR, they've sold out.
Yes.
So what do you say to that? What do you? I mean, I tease my students a little bit, and some of my colleagues like you. I say, well, if you can do journalism, you can do PR, but not necessarily vice versa. Do you agree with that?
I definitely agree. Okay. I definitely agree. But the thing, too, I think the face of journalism has changed a bit in the digital age, where I know leaving a Gannett paper, things had evolved from news to information. We were information providers.
Subtle difference, but it's important.
Right, it is an important difference. And if you think about public relations, you know, that they kind of, things have kind of gotten muddied a bit, you know, with news becoming information, public relations people providing information, and you meet. And being someone who's been on that journalism side as well as the public relations side, I think I am good to help bring all of that together.
So what classes do you teach now, and what will you teach next time?
Right now I'm teaching 2 sections of public relations writing and a digital public relations class, which is special topics.
And that's a brand new class,
It's a brand new class. Next semester I will continue to teach PR writing and I also teach PR techniques.
Now, have you learned? I mean, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure UCA is different from Jackson State, and one semester is going to be different, from the other one.
Right.
What have you learned this semester that you think you'll change? What will you tweak next semester, just based on your experiences?
Well, what I will tweak, I think I will really utilize Blackboard more. I do use Blackboard. Students do not want me to return assignments with my raggedy handwriting on it. So,
oops, they haven't told me that.
having me digitally give them feedback, I think is great, because they can at least read it and understand it.
Well, that's a good point.
Right. So I think that's very key. But just making sure that they have more activities where they can discuss matters more. With the PR writing students, of course, they have to write a lot, but we need to have more discussion with the writing and having more time for them to write. And I also want to turn the PR writing class into a service learning class, because there's so many nonprofit organizations here in Conway who could really utilize the services of the PR writing students, whether it's blogging, writing brochure content, online content, social media content. All of that is great, and I think those students will be able to provide a valuable service for local nonprofits.
And they really seem, I mean, I see this in my journalism classes all the time. They love real world experiences and making contacts and that kind of thing. So.
Right, and I've been working now to make some contacts in the community so the students can have a choice.
I mean, most of your students were more familiar with Conway than you were when you got here.
Exactly, right. And for now, though, they're working on behalf of their own department.
Yeah, that's
great. Doing work for their own department. And I think it helps the department, it helps the students, it helps them have material that is actually used that they can put in their portfolio, and they'll be proud to say, yes, I created this brochure for the department. Yes, I wrote these articles for the department's newsletter. Yes, I wrote this content for the website. And that's a sense of pride, to have the students contributing to the department in such a way.
And I think I can speak for the journalism department. We're thrilled to have a good partnership with PR, our PR colleagues, you and Dr. Amy Pitchford and Dr. Jeff Piagari. So we're looking forward to future, many years of future collaboration, students and faculty. So.
Looking forward to it, definitely.
Riva, thanks for coming on with us, and we want you back after you've sort of gotten your feet under you and see maybe looking back on another semester or two, some of your successes.
Yes, thanks for having me, Darna.
All right, Riva, thanks.
All right.
Spotlight will be back in a moment.
Think of the NCAA as a spirit squad, cheering for student athletes at every big event and every small one. We'd be there in the classroom, at graduation, at their first job interview. Okay, so don't think of us as a spirit squad. Think of us as a mascot. Well, just know we're always there for student athletes.
For more information about the programs and people featured on the show, call the College of Fine Arts and Communication at 501-450-3293 or check us out on the web at www.uca.edu/CFAC, and we're also on Facebook. We'll be back again next time on Spotlight, so please join us then.